Alright class, here is our first video lesson of the year and our very first math lesson of the year. And our first lesson has to do with something called integers. We're going to find out what an integer is, and then we're going to learn how to add them. Alright? So first things first, let's talk about what is an integer. Well, an integer is a type of number. Okay, it's a category of numbers. An integer is any whole number. Alright, so it has to be a whole number. So we cannot have any fractions. So we're going to have no fractions, or we're not going to have any decimals, such as 0.5. Okay, now that might make you happy if you do not like fractions, because we are only going to deal with whole numbers in this chapter 1. Okay, so it has to be a whole number, alright, such as 6. That's a whole number. And it needs to be positive, or it can be negative. Okay, so they are whole numbers that are positive and negative. Let's take a look at a number line. Alright, so we're going to start with right in the middle. We have 0. Because 0 separates our positive numbers on one side and our negative numbers on the other side. We'll throw a couple examples out here. We'll just label this up to 5. And we'll label this one negatives all the way to negative 5. Okay, now here's the thing. You can picture 0 being like a mirror, and the numbers on this side are the exact opposite as the numbers on the other side. Okay, they're complete opposites of each other, like negative 3 and positive 3. Okay, that's going to be important for this chapter. So why do we even care about integers? Where are they used? Well, they're used in a lot of different places in the world. If you are a person who likes to play golf, you would use integers, because that's how golf scores are. If you were playing a hole of golf and you got a -2 on that hole, that would make you very happy for a score. But if you got a 6, that would make you very sad. Alright, you wouldn't like that very much. If you're talking about elevation, okay, like how tall a mountain is, for example, let's say you have a mountain that is 3,000 feet above sea level. That would be a positive number because it's above sea level, above the level of the ocean. But if you were talking about how deep a spot was in the ocean, you would say below sea level. Like if you were going 2,000 feet below the surface of the ocean, we would write that -2,000 to represent that. Alright, another place integers are used in finance world, such as stocks and banks and investments. Okay, you could have money in the bank. Let's say you have $300. Okay, that would be a positive $300 because you have that much money to spend. But if you owe money, like if you have no money in the bank account and you actually owe money, you could have a negative balance. Alright, like you could owe $200 and you could have -200 in your bank. That's how it would show up. Alright, let's take a look at how to add integers. Well, let me back up for a second. We're going to take a look at the absolute value first. Okay, so save that. We're not going to add yet. We're going to look at the absolute value first. Alright, the absolute value of a number is how far away a number is from 0. Okay, basically how many spaces it is away from 0. And here's the thing, the absolute value, okay, is always going to be positive. Alright, absolute values are always positive. Okay, let's take a look at how this works. Let's put our 0 here again. We have our positives. We have our negatives. We'll just label this up to 5 like we did before. And we will label this down to -5 like we did before. Alright, and if we were going to find the absolute value of a number, we would just count up how far away from 0 that number is. For example, if we wanted to find the absolute value of positive 3, it's obvious it is 3 places away from 0. So 3 would be the absolute value of positive 3. Okay, pretty simple. And same with a negative number. Let's say we wanted to find the absolute value of negative 4. Negative 4 is 4 places away from 0, so its absolute value is 4. Okay, it's not going to be negative 4 because we're talking about how far away from 0 it is. It is 4 away from 0. Okay, so here's a few examples. Let's take a look at these. If we wanted to find the absolute value of 7, that's easy. It's just going to be 7. 7 is 7 places away from 0. Positive 12 is going to have an absolute value of 12. Alright, in our negative numbers, negative 9 is 9 places down from 0, so it has an absolute value of 9. Negative 27 is 27 places away from 0, so it has an absolute value of 27. Alright, that's how absolute value works. Now let's get into adding. Okay, the first type of problems we have is if we were going to add integers that have the same sign. Okay, take a look at these problems. In number 1, both of these are positive. Number 3, both of them are negative. Number 4, they're both positive. Okay, they both have the same sign in each problem, either positive or negative. So when you have that situation where they have the same sign, step number 1, I just want you guys to add like normal. Okay, nothing fancy, just add like normal. 7 plus 2, 9. And then step number 2, give the answer the same sign. Alright, problem number 1 is already done. They were both positive, so the answer is going to stay positive. Okay, problem number 2, we're just going to do step number 1. We're going to add like normal. 9 and 4. That'll give us 13. And now I'm going to do step number 2, give the answer the same sign. Since both of these guys are negative, your answer for this problem is going to be negative. Alright, we gave it the same sign. Let's take a look at problem number 3. Okay, both of these are the same. Add like normal, that will give me 88. Adding like normal. And now I want to make it negative because both of these numbers are negative. My answer will be negative. Okay, last one, number 4. This is just a normal addition problem, adding two numbers together that are positive. If you add those together, you get 109, and they're both positive, so we're going to leave it positive. Okay, that's your first rule, adding integers that have the same sign. Now let's talk about if we were going to add some integers that have different signs. Alright, like these problems. One is positive, one is negative. This one's negative, that one's positive. Okay, so they're different. They're not the same. So we have some different rules. Step number 1, I want you to subtract the numbers. Okay, when they're different, we are going to subtract. Step number 2, when you get your answer after you subtract, you're going to make the sign the same as the bigger number. Okay, you're going to make your answer the same as the bigger number. Alright, let me talk to you about what I mean by a bigger number. Because we're going to use the absolute value. Okay, we'll call it the AV. We're going to use the absolute value to find which one is bigger. And this is what I mean. Let's say we have negative 37 and we have positive 19. Okay, now if we were looking at these numbers, 19 is obviously a much bigger number than 37. Okay, the value of 19 is much bigger than negative 37. But I want to know the absolute value. And if I look at the absolute value, negative 37 is 37 places away from 0. 19, positive 19, is only 19 places away from 0. Okay, so according to my absolute value, 37 has a bigger absolute value. Okay, and that's what we're going off of to find the sign for the answer. Okay, so let me show you this. Let's take a look at how this works. We have problem number 1. I'm going to do step number 1. Because they're different, positive and negative, I'm going to subtract. Okay, just some simple subtraction. 6 minus 2 gives me 4. Okay, I subtracted. I did step number 1. Step number 2, make the sign the same as the bigger number, looking at the absolute value. Okay, in this case, the absolute value of 6 is bigger than the absolute value of negative 2. So that means it is going to stay a positive 4 because the positive 6 has a bigger value. Okay, we'll leave that a 4. Let's take a look at problem number 2. They're different. One is negative, one is positive. So I'm going to subtract. That's step number 1. I'm just going to take 15 minus 6. If I do that, I subtract those, I get 9. Alright? Then I want you to do step number 2. Make the sign the same as the bigger number with the absolute value. In this case, the negative 15 has a bigger absolute value than 6. So my answer has to be negative since the negative 15 has a bigger value. So I'm going to just make it a negative 9. Take my 9, just put a negative in front of it. Okay? That's our answer. Let's take a look at number 3. Again, they're different. We have a negative, we have a positive, we have to subtract them. And when I go to set this one up, if I just try and do 18 minus 23, okay, that's not really going to work, alright? We can't do that. You got to have your bigger number on top to be able to subtract them. Okay, so let's just do a flipperoo on here. We'll just flip these numbers around. Okay, so that we can subtract them. Just take the 23, put that puppy on top, and we'll put the 18 below. Now we can subtract them. Doesn't that look like much better? Yeah, it does. Alright, so let's subtract those. That'll give us a 5. 23 minus 18. Okay, we just did step number 1. Step number 2, make the sign the same as the bigger absolute value. Looks like our bigger absolute value is going to be 23. 23 is further away from 0 than 18, so it's bigger. So this is just going to stay positive 5 for our answer. Alright, cool. Last one, problem number 4. They are different. We're going to have to subtract. It looks like we could just do 65 minus 42, so I'm going to do that over here. 65 minus 42. Okay, subtract those. That's going to give us 23. Alright, now let's do step number 2. Find out which one has a bigger absolute value. It is going to be negative 65 because that is further away from 0 than the 42. Since it's negative, that's going to make my answer negative. So my final answer here is negative 23. Alright, that's how we add integers that have different signs.